Okay, grade 5, The Nose from Jupiter, chapter 3, The Coming of Norbert. The bell rang, separating silence from noise. Before the bell, the classroom was hushed. The kids were bent over desks, concentrating. After the bell was pandemonium. Friday afternoon, time to stretch your cramped muscles, put away your weekday anxieties, and spend 2 full days thinking about not very much. So why was I so grumpy? You would think that I wanted to stay in school. Walk you home, Victor called from the desk ahead of mine. Great afternoon for a walk. We won't even need our jackets. He had a smile on his face. He liked home. Maybe that was it. Maybe I wasn't looking forward to going home. Partly because it was so darn quiet at my house. Just me and the dust balls under the TV cabinet until my mom got home from work at 6. I nodded to Victor. Sure, I'd walk home with him. Miranda was looking at me. She was one of the nicest kids in the class and by far the best athlete. Smart too, and really pretty. Looks like she eats lots of fiber and does push-ups every morning. No reason for her to notice me. Not me, boring old Alan Dingwall. I ate potato chips and generally had no idea what was going on in math class. Mr. Duchesne might as well have been talking a different language. Sanskrit, maybe. I tried to smile at Miranda, but then she turned away. Victor was right. It was a lovely afternoon. Late September, the sun was shining hard and hot. It was like summer, only somehow more precious than summer because you knew it wouldn't last. More precious and a little bit sadder. We tied our jackets around our waist. The bullies from class 7L were hanging around the south end of the school, so we left by the north gate. The Cougars, they called themselves. Kids my age who happened to be bigger and tougher than I was. Actually, Prudence wasn't bigger, she was smaller. There are 2 gates into our schoolyard. Every afternoon, the Cougars hang out at one of them. Sometimes north, sometimes south. And everyone else goes to the other one. That day, we all left by the north gate because the Cougars were at the south one. It meant a longer walk home along Elgin, but I didn't mind. Actually, that's not true. I did mind. I minded a lot. I minded not having a choice to go home the way I wanted. I minded having to do what the bullies wanted. I minded not mattering. The bullies weren't doing this to terrorize me, Alan Dingwall, or my friend, Victor Grunwald, or any of the other kids who walked home. It wasn't personal. It was all of us. None of us mattered. I minded not being able to do anything about it, too. What could I tell my teacher, Miss Scathley, or the principal? The bullies don't threaten us. They don't beat us up, or they don't take our lunch money. They don't hurt any of us, but they could. They are mean enough to do it. Once last year, Gary, one of the Cougars, tripped over a kid named Cecil and fell in the mud. It was an accident. Cecil apologized and everything, but Gary's pants got all dirty. Well, the next week, Cecil came to school in short pants. When asked how come, he started to cry. Turned out all his pants were dirty. The bullies had waited until wash day and then taken every pair of pants he had off the clothesline and dipped them into black paint. Then hung them back up. To me, the scariest part of that episode was the bullies following Cecil to his house. A guy's backyard is his castle. I'd hate the idea of them hanging around where I lived. Cecil and his family moved during the summer. I don't think the paint episode had anything to do with it, but you never know. Last week, a new kid walked past the bullies. It was her first day, and she didn't know what she was doing. We watched her, all of us standing there in the middle of the playground, watching this kid from out of town, a grade 6er, not big, not small, just a regular-sized girl, walk out the gate past the Cougars. And they let her go. They didn't even look at her. They looked at us. She walked down the street all by herself, and none of us followed her. We turned around and walked out the other gate. She probably thought we were being snooty, but we weren't. We were just terrorized. The next day, the kid knew better. Someone in her class told her. From then on, she's gone out the same gate as the rest of us. It isn't right, all of us acting like sheep, checking to see where the Cougars were hanging out, and then turning in a flock to go out the other exit. Another reason I hated going home. Miranda doesn't act afraid of the Cougars. Mind you, she goes home on the bus. I stared across the sunny schoolyard at the Cougars, Larry and Barry, Gary and Big Mary, and Prudence. The rest of us wheeled away from them, heading slowly but inevitably towards the other side of the schoolyard. Larry and Barry are not typical bullies. They're big and dumb and laugh when someone belches. In a regular class, they'd probably just get called Moose. But in a class with real bullies, the same class as Gary, say, or Mary, who laugh when someone gets hurt, they act like bullies too. And of course, everyone in class defers to Prudence, who never laughs at all. Mary is crude, a playground supertanker, sailing on a sea of snot and dirty words. And gas. I don't envy anyone who sits behind her in class. Prudence is an odd one. At first glance, you wouldn't think she belonged on the same schoolyard as Mary. She doesn't look nice, exactly, because she never smiles, but she could be nice looking. She's small and thin with a pretty face, I think. She's tidy, her hair in a braid, nice clothes. When she spits, she doesn't get any on her. What she is, she's tough, inside and out. If you did anything bad to her, she'd get you back, even if it killed her. If you knocked her down and then moved across the continent, you would not be able to rest easy. Someday, maybe not this week or next week, but someday, you just knew that Prudence would find you and knock you down and then stomp on you. And she's really strong. Once at recess, I saw her squeeze a can of beans until it burst. Some kind of bet with Gary. There was a crowd of us. The metal in the can cut her hand so it bled, but she kept on squeezing and never changed expression until the beans erupted out of the end of the can. Then she nodded at Gary and walked away, blood dripping from her fingers. Wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to worry about the bullies, I said to Victor, walking over the Elgin Street Bridge. We leaned over. The water was high. Victor wiped his nose. I don't worry about the bullies, he said. We're going the long way home tonight because of them, I said. Oh, sure, but I'm not worried about them. It's not right, I almost shouted. Don't you see? They shouldn't be getting away with it. We should be standing up to them. I wish I wasn't such a coward, suggested Victor. Ugh, some friend. Thanks, Vic, I said with a sigh, but he was right. You don't want to get yourself beaten up to a jelly, he said. Nothing cowardly about that. You're not Superman, just a regular guy. Then I need help. We need help. Where should we look for it? Victor stared up at me. Then he pointed up at the sky. Look, he said, up in the sky. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? That Victor, what a riot. I punched him lightly. Ow, that hurt. Sorry. He rubbed his arm. That was a pretty good punch. Maybe you don't need any help, Ellen. Maybe you're strong enough already. I laughed. Seriously, don't you wish you were 7 feet tall, I said, so you wouldn't have to worry about the bullies? Victor shrugged. Even if I were 7 feet tall, I'd make millions of dollars a year for playing basketball, so I wouldn't worry about anything. I sighed. I can't decide whether Victor is the most sensible guy I know or the thickest. Turning down the crescent where we both lived, I noticed Victor's mom in the garden. I started to wave and then I stopped myself. Victor wasn't waving, so why should I? She wasn't my mom. What are you going to do when you get home? He asked me. I don't know, I said. I kind of felt mad at myself. I didn't want to watch TV or play the computer. That was too easy. I wanted to punish myself for not standing up to the bullies, for not having anyone waiting for me at home. Stupid, I know, but that's just how I felt. I think I'll cut the grass, he said firmly. I said firmly. Victor stared at me. He knows I hate cutting the grass. No, really, he said. What are you going to do? The collie dog didn't seem to have any owner. It hung around, panting and looking at me. Go away, I shouted over the noise of the lawnmower, and the dog trotted about 4 feet away and relieved herself on one of our rhododendrons, and I went back to the lawn. I'd missed cutting it 2 or 3 weeks in a row, and it was tough going. I turned off the power so I can untangle the long grass from the motor blades. I was thinking about how good a glass of lemonade would taste when I heard the low buzzing right beside my ear. So close I could feel it as well as hear it. You know the sound. So did I. There was a bee nearby. If you can hear it right in your ear, it's too close for comfort. I turned quickly and caught a flash of something hovering right in front of my face, a black and yellow blur about the size and shape of a bullet. I let out a yell and jumped back. The buzzing followed me. I started to run away and tripped over the dog. Stupid thing, probably thought I wanted to play. I stumbled and the dog and I fell to the ground together. I don't know about the dog, but I got the wind knocked out of me. For a minute or so, I couldn't breathe. I lay on the ground in a ball. Finally, I was able to take long, excruciatingly painful breaths. Breathe slowly, they say, in through the nose and out through the mouth. I heard the bee again faintly, but I didn't care. I was hurting too much. I closed my eyes, in through the nose. The next thing I knew, I felt a sudden, sharp pain. Yes, in my nose, way in. I don't know if you heard the story about the bee that flew up the guy's nose and kept going, crawling and buzzing around right in his brain and stinging him until he died. Did you hear that one? And when I felt the pain in my nose, that's what I thought about, and I panicked. Wouldn't you? I blew my nose as hard as I could, holding the other nostril to force the air out of the blocked one. No Kleenex around, but this was not the time to be worrying about manners. After a minute, I stopped. Pretty messy, but I didn't care. Was the bee gone? I couldn't see it or hear it. Maybe it had flown off to look for the flowers, or maybe not. I blew some more. My nose didn't hurt. I didn't know whether to be worried or not. I was pretty sure I'd had something in my nose and pretty sure I had blown it out, but my nose didn't hurt. Not at all. Somehow I figured if that bee was inside of me, I would feel it. The collie, meanwhile, had moved a few feet off and was staring at me with her head on one side like I was a circus act. Stupid dog. I started to sneeze. I sneezed and sneezed and sneezed. Finally, about 20 sneezes later, I stopped. I couldn't feel anything. I sniffed a few times, experimentally, still no feeling. Fine. I must have dislodged the whatever it was. I went back to the lawnmower, and that's when I heard the voice. "Here we are at last," it said. I looked over my shoulder to see who was talking, but somehow I knew there wasn't anyone there. The squeaky voice was coming from inside of me, inside my nose. "Oh, this is nice. Say, this is a great place you got here." "Hello," I said. "Who are you?" "Living room, bedroom, kitchen, back room, and a garage, of course. Very nice indeed. I think I'm going to be quite happy here." "What are you talking about?" I said. "If you can see the place I was living on in Jupiter, this is luxury, just like the commercials you people send out. This is the life. Uh-huh." "That's my nose you're talking about," I said, "isn't it?" You tell me. I'm a stranger here myself." A high and squeaky voice coming from inside my nose. Suddenly I panicked. I didn't like the idea of some alien living inside me. I had to get out. I made a fist and hit myself in the nose. Ouch! I held my breath and blew out as hard as I could, one nostril at a time. I screamed, hummed, ran around the backyard, shaking my head. I must have looked like a horse being driven crazy by flies. The dog thought the whole thing was a game, chased me around the yard, barking and jumping up. I stopped running. I was panting. The dog was panting. We stared at each other. Silence. Could it have worked? I didn't feel anything inside me. "Hello?" I said very tentatively, hardly daring to hope. "Phew! Is it hot in here or is it just me? I hope you've got air conditioning. The last place I stayed at, all they had was these little fans, and let me tell you." That did it. I sat down and started to cry. The dog barked in my face. I tried to shoo it away, but it wouldn't budge. I cried harder than that. Hey, stop that, big fella. You're drowning me, leaking all over the back room here." I stopped in surprise. I'd never been called big fella before. "That's more like it." The squeaky voice sounded encouraging before turning tough. "And you, lassie, go home. Yeah, you, go home already. Chase a stick. Or go save someone from drowning, okay? Do me a favor. Get out of here." I had to laugh. The look on the dog's face was so comical. After a moment, it shook its head and trotted off. "That's better. Laughing is a good sign. Maybe you don't need as much help as you think, big boy." "Help?" I said. "Sure. Didn't you ask for help?" I didn't answer. "Well, don't worry about it. I'm going to the kitchen to put on a pot of hot cocoa. On Jupiter, all we drink is hot cocoa." I looked around. None of the neighbors were outside. Thank heavens. I didn't want anyone else to notice me talking to myself. "Don't be so standoffish. I'm just trying to get acquainted. Say, what's your name?" I didn't think I was crazy. Crazy was when you didn't know what was going on. I knew, all right, it just didn't make any sense. I'm Alan, I said, and I almost stuck my hand out before I remembered there was no one to shake it. I'm Norbert. And you come from Jupiter, I said. That is so weird. What's weird? You come from Earth. Now that's weird. If you like, a tiny little planet that's mostly water. One thing I will say though, you're a great host, Alan. I love this place. That's the inside of my nose you're talking about? Well, whatever. It needs a little fixing up, maybe, but there's a lot of potential here. You don't know what you've got inside of you, Al. And now we are on Chapter 4.